I'd like to call the meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the pledge of the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. A reminder to please silence your cell phones during the meeting. Tonight's reorganization of the board takes place for the election of a president and vice president and the setting of dates and times of meetings for the coming school year. Section 402 of the school code states that there shall be elected from the holdover members a temporary president to chair the reorganization meeting, and the secretary of the board shall act as the secretary of such meeting. Election of temporary president.
I nominate Rich Robinson.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's it?
That was about as good as it's going to get.
That's all you get.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
And now I guess the next order of business is reading the certificate of election of elected board members. The board secretary is performing that function? Or am I?
You are.
I am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Anybody rise, or will you all stay seated?
You're good.
You can tell I'm new to this, right? Certificate of election, November 7th, 2017. We, the undersigned members of the York County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the municipal election held on November 7th, 2017, that Ellen C. Fryrick, James R. Sanders, Stephen P. Scalette, and Kenneth H. Watts were duly elected to the office of School Director for York Suburban School District for a 4-year term.
Here, here.
Okay.
Here, there.
Next order of business is the swearing in of elected board members.
Wendy?
For this, I think they should rise
Yes.
and raise their right.
And raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations. Now we'll have a roll call.
Mrs. Fryrick?
Here.
Mr. Posnow?
Here?
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Sanders?
Here.
Mr. Scalette?
Here.
Mrs. Schrader?
Here.
Mr. Sears?
Here.
Mr. Toman?
He's
Mr.
out of,
Watts?
Mr.
Here.
Toman is out of town on business, for the record.
Got to go back to Washington.
We'll give our guests a minute to,
Thank you.
okay.
Nice.
Item E, the report of the nominations committee. The minutes of November 20th are provided. There are no questions. We'll proceed to the election of the president. And as soon as I get the, okay. Nominations for president are now open. Do we have any nominations for president?
For the committee, you can.
Sorry, thank you, Dr. Reddy. The meeting was called to order on November 20th, 2017. By unanimous vote of the committee, Mr. John Posnow will be recommended for the office of president. Now I think I open the floor. Pardon?
Second that nomination.
Okay. Okay, so we have a nomination on the floor. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, the nominations are now closed. And we call for a vote. Oh, public comment, sorry. Thank you.
I have a comment.
A comment.
Sign his position as treasurer, he can't hold two positions at once?
Not yet. I get a month, I think.
Get him on?
I mean, essentially, yes, eventually. We're gonna allow him to run the next finance committee meeting if he wants to, but you should be talking about a successor.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to, he technically he'd be holding two offices.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any prohibitions specifically in the code.
Okay.
It's just typical that you don't hold both.
Just asking.
Yeah.
It's power grab.
I know,
Yeah.
that's what it is, it's your last chance.
Are there any public comments? Hearing no public comment, may we have a vote?
Schrader,
Yes.
Posenow,
Do I vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Sears,
Yes.
Scolette,
Yes.
Fryrick,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Watts,
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
That was easy. Congratulations.
And now I believe it is my great pleasure to turn the podium over to the newly elected president. Yes.
Yeah, you've been seated.
Can I stay here?
No.
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 No, there's a whole ceremony. We break this over your head and everything.
Did you sign all of the?
No, I just got Ellen's.
Okay, so we need to make sure
Right.
we get.
That could be a safe thing.
As we're doing some transfer, the oath of office, if the other board members could, there should be an oath of office at your station. I see it under, if you could sign that, and Rich was acting as temporary president, so we need to have him sign them as soon as you sign them. So we could work those certificates over to Rich. Okay, so now we're here.
Continuing on, nominations for the vice president. By unanimous vote of the committee, Mrs. Lois Ann Schrader will be recommended for the office of vice president.
Other nominations?
Are there other nominations? Public comment? Okay.
Watts,
Yes.
Sears, Robinson,
Yes.
Scolette,
Yes.
Schrader,
Yes.
Posenow,
Yes.
Sanders,
Yes.
Fryrick.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You have before you the meeting schedule of the planning committee and regular monthly meetings. The administration is going to recommend the approval of the meeting schedule for 2018. And all times are at 7 p.m. at the place where the meetings are held is the Provo Education Center unless advertised otherwise. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I think this can be a short roll call.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
You've got in front of you the list of all the possible committees. What I would ask is that you email me with your preferences of which committees you would like to serve on, and by the next meeting, we will fill the committees out.
And as we mentioned, the Finance Committee is scheduled to meet next Wednesday. It's a public meeting, and we do encourage some board members, maybe if you're interested in that committee, to be one that you come to. Lois?
John, would you also want anybody who's interested in treasurer to so?
Sure. Sure, let me
Yeah.
know, yeah.
I was thinking.
And with that, can I have a motion for adjournment of this
So
portion of the
moved.
meeting?
Second.
Fran, do we need a vote? No? Okay. We are adjourned, and we will begin immediately with the next portion of the meeting. And with that, we will call the December 4th, 2017 Planning Committee meeting to order. All comments will be addressed to the President, Board, and staff members, and we will not respond to comments or questions during the meeting unless recognized by the President for this purpose. Comments will be limited at the discretion of the President to 5 minutes or less. If you have a comment, please stand and give your name and address and comment.
We should ask for public comment.
Yeah, that's what he's...
Charles Snyder, 1180 Everett Road. Two quick questions. Number one, how far outside of the district are we going to go to search for a new superintendent?
I think the answer is we're not sure yet. We're just beginning the search process
Well, I just
and
want to
discussion.
make sure that we looked outside. I'm the parent of 3 kids that graduated, and I have 2 grandkids here. With all the things that have gone on in the past couple of years, I think we should do a lot of soul searching and really...
It will be a comprehensive search.
Okay. Well, I'm just...
Yeah.
Number 2, how many kids from suburban go to Vo-Tech now, or York School of Technology?
Just
54?
under 40,
Yeah, 40 now.
just under 40.
Okay. I mean, I was involved in the trucking business for years, and we had over 100 kids in 4 classes every year. And it breaks my heart to watch everybody say, we got to go to college, we got to go to college. And there's so many people needed. And right now, there's 300,000 trucking driving jobs in this country. We need electricians, we need plumbers, we need mechanics. And I want to put on notice that we get and push students at suburban to get into these programs, because they're making more money than half the college grads are.
If I could just respond briefly, I am the York Suburban representative to the Joint Operating Committee at the School of Technology.
Yeah.
And on an annual basis, the School of Technology comes to our middle school, and in fact, that has just happened in the last month, and makes a presentation so that all of our students are aware, and it's a very nice program. They are aware of the offerings at the York County School of Technology. So I can reassure you that we are exposing our students to the offerings there. And then at that point, they make their decision as to whether or not they are interested in attending the School of Technology.
Well, I understand that. I was still on the advisory committee, but I was very active for 40 years in my business. And I just don't see the guidance counselors and people that could be guiding these people getting involved. Just coming over to my office for a one-time visit, you have no idea what's in the future. I just think that there's a lack of support in the community to give these kids another opportunity. Show it one time, that's it, that's not enough. Kids today need a little guidance, a little push. So if I can help anytime, let me know.
Thank you. Acting Superintendent's report.
Okay. First up tonight, we have a report from the York Suburban Education Foundation. Sarah Reniker. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Redding, and thank you for allowing us to give you a brief update. I just thought I'd concentrate, and I have 2 students here with me this evening, Olivia Pinzola and Caroline Liu, and you'll be hearing from them in just a moment to give you an update of what the students are working on. Since 2008, the York Suburban Education Foundation has funded 114 grants totaling $274,000 into our classrooms to support our students and our teachers. In 2017, we funded 11 grants totaling $55,078, and that was the highest amount of granting that we've ever done in a single year. So that number is continuing to grow. Out of those 11 grants, just some highlights. 3 of those grants were concepts that have been funded actually in the past. They were funded as pilot programs, and because they flourished and did so well, we were able to continue funding to be able to expand some of those programs. Just to give you an example, 2 years ago we funded Trout in the Classroom in the 7th grade science curriculum, and we expanded that to every science grade classroom this year because it worked so well as a pilot program through the Pennsylvania Fish and Game Commission, and Katie Green, the teacher that originally asked for that grant. We also expanded adaptive furniture, which we've funded in the past 2 years. And so that was another pilot program that's working so well that the teachers are continuing to find that beneficial. We also grew the availability for Yorkshire to grow relationships with their English language learners over the summer, their parents over the summer. They had a summer program, and we were able to extend more funding for the English language learning program to grow those relationships with parents. We also had growth in our alumni involvement and interest. Over this past year, we had a class gift from the class of 1966 that was presented. $10,500 was a cumulative gift that class gave to the Education Foundation to support our granting. And in August, we also had a generous donor that had donated to the class of 1965 gift 2 years ago, but gave a singular gift this year that allowed us to expand the funding through our granting from $30,000 through our EITC program to $40,000 that supported the district-wide Learning Commons Strategic Initiative, or the STEAM program, throughout the district. There's actually an article in the Pride if you'd want to read more details about what the STEAM initiative is doing. It's really an exciting project, and we're happy to be a partner in that. Last, I'd like to highlight the growth of the Student-Led Impact Foundation, and to that I'm going to turn it over to Caroline and Olivia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, my name is Liv Finzola, and I'm the Vice President of the Impact Foundation. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you. The Impact Foundation Impact Closets have been very successful in their first year of operation. The 2 student members of the board are assigned to manage a closet in each building, taking inventory and determining what items are needed at each school. We continue to refine our inventory processes, and it's exciting to see the utilization of the staff growing each week. In collaboration with the Luther Memorial Church and the school district, we have helped to start the Food for Thought Weekend Backpack Program. Our student board renovated a room at the church over the summer to store food and supplies and pack the backpacks in each week. We began sending backpacks home with Valley View students in mid-September and more recently expanded to Indian Rock. It takes about $5,000 per year to send 50 backpacks home weekly during the school year. We have received startup funding through the Constructional Financial Management Association, and the YS Girls volleyball team supported our Food for Thought with their annual Blackout fundraiser. We are exploring other ideas for sustainable funding and have received support from many YS alumni. Caroline Liu is an Impact Foundation board member and has played an important role in getting the Food for Thought program started. She will now share a few more details.
Thanks, Liv. So every week, student volunteers go to the Luther Memorial Church, and we pack up backpacks to be sent home with kids on Friday. At the beginning, we started with 3 students from Valley View, and we've grown to 18 students, and then 2 weeks ago, as Liv said, we expanded to Indian Rock. We obtain the food by purchasing it through the Central Penn Food Bank, and we've also explored other options by doing other smaller fundraisers to get larger food donations for longer breaks like Thanksgiving and this upcoming winter break. I'd just like to thank you all again for giving us the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thanks, girls. So that concludes our report. We have 17 board members on our student-led committee, and it's really been a nice growth in terms of integrating the students in the work that we do at the foundation. All of it, of course, is supporting the suburban teachers and students. So thanks so much for all that you do, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question. They said that they're doing the backpacks, which I think is really great. Are they doing it on the other side of the district also? I mean, there's an elementary school and a...
Yes, we are aware of other initiatives that are happening in some of the other schools like Yorkshire, and East York, of course, already has a backpack program through Eastminster.
Okay,
Eastminster Presbyterian already funds.
On that one also?
No, that's actually a separate program that started 2 years ago at Eastminster, or at East York, and Eastminster Presbyterian Church is a collaborator and a partner there, and they fund that entire program and run that operation.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Well, I wanted to just say hats off, thank you to the students. I just think it's awesome that we have this initiative that's run by students. I mean, you don't have to look very far to know and hear the concerns about, kids today kind of thing. And my hat's off to kids today that are here and leading this kind of initiative. I just think it's awesome, and what a great learning experience it is to be shepherded by the adults involved with the foundation, because you guys in a few years are going to be those adults that are in charge of such things. And so my hat's off, and appreciate your hard work. Could you repeat for me the figure that you said, how much per week, I think it is?
It was $5,000 to provide 50 students with backpacks for the school year.
Per year, right, yeah.
$5,000 for 50 backpacks
Yeah.
for the...
That's essentially a benchmark that we learned through the research that we did, as well as learning from the East York program. It costs about $5,000 a year to send 50 backpacks during the school year home with 50 children per year.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Next on my agenda of topics is an item that ultimately will need board consideration for within our budget, and I asked Mrs. Hassenfuss to share some information on the transfer entity and what that means and what that looks like as it relates to the autistic support classroom the district is considering. So, Natalie?
I'm just going to start quickly with what is autism, an explanation of what is autism. Autism is a spectrum disorder that's a group of complex neurological developmental disabilities characterized by impaired social interaction, problems with nonverbal and verbal communication, and unusual or severely limited activities, interests, or behaviors. They are defined purely by the behavioral manifestations. That's how autism spectrum disorders are defined. Currently, autism spectrum disorder, for students with more functional skills in district, they're identified with autism, but their skills are more functional. We service those students currently in either our learning support programs or emotional support programs, which are run in the district. We have those classes in district. York Suburban students in grades K2 on the autism spectrum with more significant deficits are currently programmed for in a district-run autistic support classroom. The board gave approval for that last year, so that is new this school year. Students in grades 3 to 5 on the autism spectrum with more significant deficits are currently programmed for in what's called a Fair Share classroom at Indian Rock. It is run by the intermediate unit, and a Fair Share classroom means there are students there from any district potentially that participates in the Fair Share program. So York Suburban hosts the classroom, but the students in the classroom don't necessarily have to be York Suburban students. York Suburban then in turn may have students in Fair Share classrooms in another district for, say, life skills support or something like that. We just happen to have the autism support rooms in our district. We currently do host Fair Share classrooms for autistic support grades 3 through 12. Last year we were K to 12, and then we took back the K2. I'm asking for I'm recommending implementation of an autistic support program at the intermediate level for next school year. Give you some idea of numbers and why I'm coming to you now to ask for that. As you can see, the numbers from 2014-15 through this school year are actual numbers at this point in time. But next year, with our students coming in from preschool, we will have 7 students identified in grades 3 through 5 with needs for an autistic support placement. In the following year, provided we don't identify anybody new, nobody moves in or nobody moves out, we would have 9 as the students just progress up through the grade levels. A little bit of data from the Center for Disease Control on the prevalence rate of autism. And that's just a little bit of data there for you. The cost of placing students in an autistic support Fair Share classroom run by the IU for this current school year is $36,648 per student. So if we look the last 4 years, the cost of students, as the numbers increase, obviously our cost is increasing. For next year with 7 students, if that cost does not change, and potentially it could. The IU determines that cost. We would be spending $256,000 to place students into autistic support classrooms run by the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. They may or may not be at Indian Rock if that is a fair share classroom, because the classroom may be full, so some of our students may have to go outside of district. The next is a breakdown of the cost for staffing and supplies for the classroom, for the autistic support classroom. And if you look through those, the total cost that we're estimating next year to bring back that program would be $250,806. So pretty much even with what it costs us to send the students out to fair share classrooms. What does an autistic support classroom look like? Autistic support classrooms generally service 8 students because of the high needs. It is a very, very individualized program. Most of the time one-on-one instruction, sometimes one-on-two if the students are a little higher functioning. The classrooms are staffed by 1 teacher and 2 paraprofessionals. And I think I said the rest, that they're taught one-on-one for the most part, and it's a heavy focus on language skills. Right now, I've already said York Suburban hosts a 3-5 fair share classroom for autistic support. If the board would grant approval to bring that classroom back into district running it instead of the IU, that would be called a transfer of entities, because we already have the classroom in our buildings. And when we transfer entities from it being run by the IU to it being run by the district, we must offer that teaching position to the current teacher in the classroom. That teacher can accept or not accept the position. The teacher there this year currently has 4 years of teaching experience with the Lincoln Intermediate Unit. We do not have to offer it to the paraprofessionals. Those positions can be advertised as positions, but the teacher, because it is a transfer of entities, we must offer them the position. Questions?
We currently offer the IU course, the IU class in our district. If we take back our students, will we still host that classroom in our district? It will go elsewhere.
It will go elsewhere. Or there will be no need for the IU to have that classroom. I don't know numbers in other districts. Or there will be no need because I've taken 7 students back, which is a classroom.
But we will still be responsible to host another fair share classroom, or no?
Fair share classrooms are determined by we host 1 classroom per 10 students we have placed. Okay. In other fair share classrooms. So when they look at our numbers right now, we host, I think we have about 42 students, and we have, I'm going to have to count quick, 1, 5. So we are a little bit under. Okay. We host a little bit more than we need to.
So we might not need to
Correct.
replace that.
Correct.
Okay. I just was curious about that balance in space and...
My understanding is fair share you only host, though, as you have space available. Am I correct? I mean, the LIU doesn't like that, I know, but if we're using the classrooms and we don't, because there have been years to my recollection where we did not have classroom space available.
Correct. At one point, I'm thinking 2 years ago, we used to have 2 autistic support classrooms, fair share classrooms at the middle school. And with the bubble of students coming through, we did have to say we can only host 1.
In the 5 classrooms that we have now, can you give us a rough breakdown on suburban kids versus non-suburban kids? Because you're saying it would be roughly 10 kids per, so 50 kids. How many are suburban and how many are from other districts?
In our classrooms, in our buildings, I can do the 3-5 because that's the one I'm currently studying. 3-5, we have, of the 8 students there, 3 of them are ours.
Another question would be whether it's reasonable to ask for, say, a 3 to 5 year projection on the cost if we bring the program in-house as opposed to leaving it as it is. And I realize you have to take some little crystal ball looks at the populations, but rather than just a static snapshot, I think it would help to have a 3 to 5 year.
Projection of. We can do that. I have the data, a snapshot projection for not next year, but then the following year.
See what you can do to extend
Sure.
that even further and take into account things like pay raises and other impact on the professional staff
Okay.
as well.
I'll work with Corinne on that. Yeah.
In the event we choose to go back to fair share, what would be our, if we choose not to host it at a district level, what would be the cost that would be sunk into the project? In other words, how much are we investing in the infrastructure or in the buildings or whatsoever else? Is this all
Oh, meaning if we
salary
took
related?
it, meaning
If we went back to fair share, what kind
if
of
we
investment
took
are
it back
yes.
next year and then decided we're going back to fair share?
Yes.
Basically, infrastructure is furniture for the classroom.
Okay. And the curriculums, would that be something that,
The curriculums potentially could be used in a learning support setting, depending on the needs of the students, so they wouldn't necessarily sit on a shelf.
and the teacher? If we would go back to a fair share?
She would then be a district employee, so whatever happens with attrition of employees in the district.
So we would have a full-time equivalent employee if we choose to go back to fair share.
We would.
Would she be able to teach other?
Correct.
She would be able to go into other classrooms?
Correct.
She isn't strictly autism?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the one teacher and the 2 supports, you said support 8 students?
Yes.
But you're projecting in a year we're going to have 9.
I'm predicting in a year we're going to have 9.
So you're going to be standing here
I
again
may
saying
be.
we need 3 more.
I may be. But those students will be placed somewhere and will cost us the $37,000.
Fair argument. Okay, thank you.
How do you get your projections for students?
For students who are currently in district, I just grade them up a year. Preschool, in January, we have meetings with preschool. I do know that there are at least 3 coming identified with autism that need special placement. At least 3 kindergartners next year that we know of.
I wonder if it would be useful just to quickly mention some of the other special needs. Like, I know when my son was at Indian Rock, we had vision impaired students, just for the education perhaps of those that are not maybe aware. Like, what other things does the IU serve?
Okay. Yeah, the IU serves vision classrooms. We do still have that vision classroom. It moved over to East York. The IU also services for us because they're low incidence populations, which is why we use the IU. We don't have enough students in any one grade level to kind of house our own. Life skill support, multi-disabilities, therapeutic emotional support. We have emotional support, but we don't have therapeutic emotional support, which is additional counseling and psychologist services. Vision impaired, deaf, hard of hearing, neurological support, which is full-time learning support.
I didn't expect a full rundown. I kind of
Yep.
You
did. But that's not, yep.
I just think it's such a great system that
It is.
we have a handful of need X services that, so it in effect saves us money if we had to hang out a shingle for every one of these classrooms.
Correct, where we only have 2 or 3 students
Right.
in a grade.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, one more since we're on it.
Sure.
And that really has to do with the way the LIU bills us. I know when I was on that board, it was probably one of the more interesting and convoluted conversations
Thank you.
that we ever had.
Thank you.
It was more or less a moving target.
Yes, it is.
I'm wondering if there's any discussion, does anybody know if there's discussion at the unit to do it a more conventional way? Our
Yes.
unit does not have to do it the way it does it.
There is, at the last business managers meeting last month, Mr. Stanton had told us that they are working on a way to get us the invoices more timely and more accurately.
I'm not so concerned about the accuracy of the invoice as the methodology by which they derive the bill. It's got to do with what they consider to be their fixed cost at any point in time, divided by the number of kids that they're supporting at that point in time. So as their populations go up and down,
They're
our
actually,
rates go up and down.
the bigger issue is they needed to take it from the special ed department into the business department, and that is happening.
So would that hopefully lead to a situation where they publish a price list at the beginning of the year?
That's what we're hoping.
Has anybody recommended using the structures that some of the other IUs use? So
Yes. We've even handed them examples.
Perfect.
Any other questions at this point? Again, there's continued opportunities for discussion and questions before a final decision is made, but we wanted to get this on the floor as a item that is being developed as part of a recommendation for budget. Okay? Thank you, Natalie. Next item on my agenda is just public, so the public is informed, and to remind our new board members that we have the PSBA training that we're scheduled to attend on December 16th. And when we did our local training, I had shared with our new board members the Stock and Leader program scheduled for January 16th. That we found out today is being moved closer. It's now going to be held here in York, as opposed to, I think it was up in New Cumberland. Yeah. So, and I have some additional invites. The folks that already received the invite, if you could let Wendy know.
Oh, I need one more.
If you are attending, we can get that information January 4th. So we still have some time to RSVP, but I do know
I'll listen to the new guy.
good program.
Got one.
Yeah. So you, yes. Okay. And we'll continue with the training programs. Next on my agenda, I ask two of our administrators who were joining us tonight to share some updates from their building, and I think Dr. Stoltz is back there. Yes, principal at Yorkshire. Let Kim go first.
Passing around, I thought it'd be just helpful to receive a copy of our December newsletter, and if you're ever curious, on the website there's always a link to the monthly newsletter. Just kind of give you a little glimpse. Along with Pride, we try to give more information, but just currently what's going on, I'll start with academics. Of course, we're in school for academics, so our primary students, K2, they spend the vast majority of their day reading, learning to read, learning to write, and mathematics. So after the full moon goes away and before they're ready to leave for a holiday break, we'll be doing our winter benchmark assessments. And a lot of those are one-to-one with the teacher, that we're trying to see the students' strengths and needs. And then based on that data, the teachers form their instructional groups. So if you came into a primary classroom, there are times when you'll see the teacher instructing within the whole group of the students, but most of the time the teacher is meeting with small groups based on their needs, be it those students that she needs to extend further or those students that are behind and she's trying to fill in some of those holes. So we look very closely at our data. As you know, this is our first year with full-day kindergarten, and it's going extremely well. I'm just so impressed with the students' stamina. They're still kicking at the end of the day, and I'm not. One thing that you'll read about in the newsletter is our D&D, or Discovery and Design. Our elementary students are coding. It's amazing how they have a color-coded carpet, and they are telling their mouse or their neighbor, up to and over 1. So they are doing beginning coding. They're doing different STEAM experiments in kindergarten. So it's really neat to see them thinking creatively. A little bit with our building focuses. We've done a lot with our brain breaks and our exercising and our movement breaks, and now we're taking an approach of mindfulness. And, we just at our last, half day in service, we had some, chair yoga. And I was just in the kindergarten classroom, and one little takeaway from that is the students were sitting on the carpet, and they put up their bunny ears, and they were doing their bunny breathing. And then they say, I am calm, I am focused. I am calm, I am focused, I am calm. So that's really neat, because there are times when you need to wake them up and energize them, and then there's other times when you do need to bring them in and have them be focused. So our teachers are starting each day with morning meetings where they're really working as a family, working as a community, problem solving, really getting to know each other's stories. As you heard, we also have a focus in our building with the ELL, our English language population. That population is growing, so we're getting really wise with the programs that work well for those students, and then also the outreach for the parents. Okay, my next part I call fun and philanthropy. Okay, so fun, tomorrow night at Yorkshire is our annual cookie decorating night. So it's free. Kids and the whole family can come in. They get a cookie, and then we have all kinds of icing and sprinkles and all kinds of fun, sugary things. They have that. They have a craft table. They have a card table where they will be designing greeting cards that we will then deliver to the senior center. And new this year, this is really exciting, the middle school Sounds of Tomorrow, and they're calling it the, I don't remember, they have a cute name for the band, but we're having like 40 musicians that are going to be along, so it's going to be
Serenading
a crazy, sugary night. So, we just participated in the canned food drive, which is district-wide, and our students brought in 500 items to donate, so that's exciting. Also, at our cookie decorating, we're going to have our giving tree. So we put out to our families if they are wishing to receive, or knowing that they can also be givers. So essentially, we have 28 families that we will be giving to. And on our giving tree tomorrow, and my administrative assistants, they organize this whole thing. They put it all together, so I'm not even sure what kind of little whatevers are going to be hanging from the tree. But it's as you've seen before, and they bring in the gifts, and then the families come. It's done anonymously, and it's beautiful. So we have Reliance, our bus company, contacted us. They're adopting a family to gift, as is the French Honor Society from the high school, as is St. John Lutheran. So, Alan, you were asking about Yorkshire and the whole backpack program. So we're building a relationship with St. John Lutheran up on Montrose. So this summer, they provided backpack shopping for 30 Yorkshire students. And we have been meeting, and I just got the word that they're ready, possibly as soon as February, to launch a backpack program at Yorkshire, the weekend backpack. So I'm just, and I haven't told the staff yet. Because I don't want to pull the gun.
Too late, it's already on TV.
All right, so that's an exciting partnership. And then finally, so funds, we do use YSEF when we can for grants. Always wonderful to receive funding that way. Patient First, which is right out my window. Every year that we've been at Yorkshire, we have received a $1,000 grant from Patient First, and we've done different things in terms of all hazard supplies, and now we're putting that money towards mindfulness supplies. So my guidance counselor made, like, it looks like a little shopping catalog of different chimes, styles of chimes that the teachers can use, different resources, different tools, and the teachers were each, we divvied up the money, and they each got to go shopping, and they were really smart, getting with their neighbor, their partner in a grade level, and saying, I'll get this chime, you get that chime, and then we'll share, so. And then finally, our PTO, I have a wonderful, hardworking PTO, and we just had our dance-a-thon. We raised $11,000, and that still trickles in a little bit, $11,000 for grade level dances for a half an hour in the gym. Lots of fun. And, then in the spring, we have Lego Bingo. That was something that we started this year, and it was, the PTO really takes this family approach to fundraising. So it was Lego Bingo, and then we went roller skating across it was on top of the ice skating rink, and then we went roller skating. But with the PTO fund, that allows us to do our field trips because they pay for the buses, admission for children that can't afford it, and assembly programs. At the end of the week, we're having a program called Science Tellers, and coming in and they're doing a pirate-themed science experiment, get the kids all excited about science. So academics and fun and philanthropy and all kinds of good things happening at Yorkshire. You're welcome anytime. I'd love to show off the building to you.
Questions for Kim? No? Thank you. Dr. Adams, Assistant Principal at the high school.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to talk about the high school. We're going to kind of tag team this a little bit with Lee. So she doesn't know what's on my list for the reports. Nobody here is Dr. Small. I don't know that. But I'm just going to kind of look over, because I don't want to steal any of Elise's thunder from her report. So I'm going to hit a couple academic things that we're doing. And I know from previous board meetings, she oftentimes hits a lot of extracurricular. So I'll kind of look, if you give me a nod like, Dr. Adams, that's in my report, just let me know. The big one for us is Keystone testing. That starts tomorrow, so we'll hit the, I'll talk about that.
It's all good. I'm good.
So that's a big one for us. We have all of our juniors are taking the English literature exam tomorrow and Wednesday. There are 2 modules for each exam, and then we do have some other students that were not proficient or advanced in biology or algebra that will be taking that this week as well. Some juniors, unfortunately, have to take literature on Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe they weren't successful on one of the other previous exams, so they'll be taking that on Thursday and Friday. So it could be a long week of testing for some students, but we'll get everybody through hopefully this week, all juniors and then retesters, or we also have move-ins that could be very good students, but maybe coming in from out of state and have never tested before. So we'll put them through the Keystone exams as well. So hopefully by Friday, we'll be pretty much wrapped up for this round of testing, unless a student is absent for some reason. So that's our big one coming up. How about the musical? Is that yours?
That's on you.
Okay.
No, I don't have that.
So we just heard a song played this morning for announcements, and our 2 teachers that are running the musical this year, they're starting auditions, and the musical is going to be Shrek. So that's a little ways down the road, but a preview of what we're going to have this year. So Shrek is going to be the musical. We do have midterms, staying on testing, midterms and final exams for our semester classes will be coming up here at the end of the month. So that's not too far off. So some of the students will hit some keystones now, and then they'll hit some larger high school exams in a little bit. Attended a student council meeting not too long ago, and I know you know about Minithon. It's a big deal around here. The student council does a fantastic job of promoting that, but I'll say it's not just the student council. It is truly a high school and York suburban community-driven event. The amount of money that they raise is outstanding, but more so the valuable experiences that the students get from being part of that Minithon and on those committees. And the reason I mentioned that, I was at the student council meeting on a Friday morning and watching students come in at 7 o'clock in the morning coming through, and the room 160, there was well over 100 students there, and they were breaking up into committees and really working on Minithon. I know it's been a focus since the beginning of the year, so I'm sure you'll hear more about Minithon as the fundraising drive continues. How about winter sports? You don't have that? Wow.
Oh.
So you're getting a good high school report. You're going to get 2 of them. The winter sports have started November 17th. Friday, November 17th was the first official day, and scrimmages are happening now, but the first official events start on Friday. So our girls basketball team will be at New Oxford in tournament. Our boys are home against Dallastown here. Wrestlers are away on Friday and Saturday in 2 tournaments, and then swimming, they'll open their first meet next week on the 14th. So winter sports are kicking up and are in gear. How about the district ensemble?
I got that.
You got that one?
I got
Okay.
that.
I'll let you talk about that. So, holiday concert, how about the holiday?
I got those
You got
covered.
that one?
Yep.
Okay. So the last thing I'll share with you, and we'll let Elise take over, is just some professional development. We have a really neat thing going on at the high school this year where the teachers had an opportunity to talk about some things that they felt that our building really needed. So we had a list of ideas, and then what we did was we had them pick a couple choices, first and second choice, and then we developed committees around what focus areas they thought we needed to do in the building. So we have 5 different committees. One of them is mindfulness. We have transitions, so we have a committee of teachers looking at 8th grade to 9th grade transition and new students coming into York Suburban, because we feel those are 2 huge transitions that sometimes our students struggle with. More of an academic, what we call TIP. We have a behavioral TIP, Trojan, it's our Trojan intervention program, like our All Ed, but we host it in the high school, so we don't have a formal alternative education program. But we want to do something for those students that don't qualify for learning support, but need some extra assistance. More so than just what they're going to get through a flex or just meeting with teachers. So we're trying to do something with that. Culturally responsive teaching, which is a book I know some of the administrators were reading. We have a group of teachers looking at that, and then career pathways. So we have a group of teachers looking at basically the transition from 12th grade beyond, whether it's the workforce, the military, college, whatever. Just trying to figure out what we can do to better help those students. So those are the 5 professional development committees. We're providing time for them, taking some faculty meeting time. We've developed a schedule, a professional development calendar this year, so those are the 5 committees that our teachers are really working on this year. It's exciting because the teachers feel like the professional development that they're getting, it feels real because it's instantly impacting what we're doing within the day. Now, some of them are more of a 2 to 3 year project, but some of them are going to have more of an immediate impact. So it's pretty neat when we're really looking at professional development this year. So I'm not going to expand on anything else because I don't want to take anything from Lisa. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Okay, next item on my agenda is opening the discussion as it relates to the search for a new superintendent. And as I had talked in general over the last month or so, seating the board here tonight was step 1 in beginning that process and moving forward. And I wanted to begin tonight with a presentation from a consulting vendor, Chester County IU, that does this professional search for school districts throughout Pennsylvania. And in talking to their director, Dr. O'Brien, he wanted to be here, but he did not want to give up his trip overseas. I forget what country he's in, but yeah. So he sent.
Go figure, not wanting to be
yeah.
here with us.
Yeah. So he sent Mary and Danielle, who if you open the packet, their information on their background is here. I'm going to turn the program over to them as a starting point, and I did preview with them the fact that, yes, they are going to talk specifically about what Chester County Intermediate Unit can do for York Suburban School District. I've asked them not to run out of the room when they're done, but maybe to sit as we talk about the other information that's in the packet, so that they may be able to give us some information that helps us formulate how we want to proceed and what the timeline might look like. So I'll turn it over to Mary, and you can begin.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much for entertaining us tonight and listening to our proposal. As Dr. Redding said, my name is Mary Curley. I'm the Director of Communications for the Chester County Intermediate Unit. And I began in the search process when our Executive Director, Joe O'Brien, first came to our Intermediate Unit in 2007. And the IU, as an organization, got into the executive search business, as it will, in around 2009. Our Executive Director, Dr. O'Brien, had been in the search process for other organizations before he came to the Intermediate Unit. And when he came to us, he asked if we did it, and we said, well, not really. Sometimes we'll do it for our school districts. And at that time, and still currently, as you're probably most of you aware,
a superintendent's tenure in the state of Pennsylvania is approximately 2.9 years. That becomes even more amazing when the law requires that a superintendent's contract be a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 5 years. So that means in the Commonwealth, the average superintendent is not even finishing their first contract, their contract out. So Dr. O'Brien, having been a superintendent and an executive director, really felt that educators, if we got into this business, could really bring a unique perspective. And he believed, and his philosophy is that it is really all about the fit, and that a superintendency between a school district, its board, and its administration is really like a marriage. And even though you might really like someone, you might not be able to live with someone. So really trying to go through a process that kind of susses out that cultural and academic and skill relationship that a board and an administration and a community is looking for in their superintendent. So that being said, we have conducted about 30 searches since 2009. It's a very intensive process for us. So we have made a commitment that we will do no more than 3 searches at a time so that we can really give a district our full attention. We have teams that go out, and then there's a core team behind the scenes that does a lot of the legwork. So you'll see a team will be assigned to a district, and that team will stay with that district until it's completed. But then there is also the support services of the entire intermediate unit behind that. So we went into this. We have quite a good success record. So of our 30 superintendents roughly that we have placed, only 1 did not get renewed for a contract. So we believe that we've done a fairly good job and met our goals. And Danielle's going to talk a little bit about the process. You have the packet, and then we'll kind of open up the floor to any questions that you might have.
I'm Danielle Schoninger. I am an Assistant Director of Human Resources at the Chester County Intermediate Unit. I've been with the IU about 5 years. I started in 2012, so I came into it after they had already started the superintendent search process. But I've been involved with it probably in the past 4 years. My background is in special education. I was a director of special education for one of our local Chester County districts before coming to the IU. You may say special ed, HR, huh? But my main role in HR is employee development, although I'm also an attorney, so I have a kind of a compliance mindset and help out with a lot of our processes and compliance and so forth at the IU. So, that being said, what is our process? As Mary said, we are educators, but we believe in using a process that's fair and consistent so that it protects the organization as well as the candidates. I don't think you mentioned, but the process is a confidential process, which the candidates tend to really appreciate. But most of all, we think that the board appreciates it as well. And that leads me into the fact that we spend a lot of time with the board up front, walking you through, is it like 40 or 50 questions? Yes. That are designed to find out from you exactly what you're looking for in a superintendent and what your plans are. What do you want to do? How do you want once we've hired and located the candidate, how do you want the transition process to evolve, things like that. Then we have a very large database of potential candidates who are both nationwide. I heard a gentleman ask about what your intentions were nationwide as well as local, but that is one of the questions that we will find out from you. Do you want to look just locally? Do you want to look nationwide? Do you have internal candidates that you want to consider, and so forth. The other thing that is very important in our process is that we truly engage all of the stakeholders in the district. We hold something called focus groups. We hold multiple focus groups for each of the stakeholders that the board identifies. Typically, it would be teachers, students, board, of course, administrators, community leaders, business people, parents, of course, and we hold multiple sessions for each group so that people, you know, if they can't come during the day, perhaps they can come in the evening and vice versa. We ask the same 4 questions in every focus group, and we take down the information. We take notes on a computer. We compile everything, although we don't say, you know, Mary said XYZ and Danielle said ABC. We compile it and we put it into themes. And all that information helps you identify the kinds of things that you're looking for in a candidate. We also use that information to help craft our interview questions, which is the next step in the process. We facilitate the interviews for you. You, the board, actually does the interviewing, but we facilitate the process for you. We arrange for each step of the way, whether it's determining which candidates should be interviewed for first, second, or even third round or beyond. We orchestrate getting their schedules in line. We have it, the room set up so that we're kind of behind the candidate and letting you know where we are, letting the candidate know as far as timing. But every candidate would get the same question and the same amount of time to answer those questions because we believe that consistency is a very, very important aspect of the process. So once you've gotten through all the rounds of interviews, we also guide you through the decision-making process of trying to decide who's your candidate, who is it that you believe will guide the district in the coming years. And then probably one of the things that we do really, really well is we check references like you wouldn't believe. I mean, we ask every candidate for the references, but, if you're a candidate, you're going to give someone references who are going to give you a positive reference, right? Well, we also then ask everybody that we talk to, well, who might give a different opinion than you? Who else could we talk to that would have a different point of view? We've done, in some cases, 60 to 100 reference calls, just trying to make sure that, we're not leaving any stone unturned. We do, Google checks, social media checks, and so forth, just to make sure there's no surprises going into the process. We also, Mary's division, the communications division, does a lot as far as guiding your district with, time to put out an informational about this, time to put out information about that, and so forth. And then finally, once the communication and the decision has been made and the references have been checked, you're at the point where you're ready to hire a superintendent and then move through the transition process. We don't stop there. We offer you support after the superintendent is in place. You might want a board superintendent retreat to get to know each other, help the new superintendent develop their entry plan, anything that comes up in the time period right after the new superintendent is identified. So as Mary said, we really look for providing you with the right match. We are educators, all of us, and we believe in education. We have a passion for education, and we want to make sure that the children in your district have the best leader possible.
So with that, we would open it up to any questions that you may have.
At the beginning of your remarks, you mentioned something to the effect that the majority of superintendents don't make it past the first contract. Is that right?
The average. So the average tenure of a superintendent in Pennsylvania in a single district is 2.9 years, and a contract by law is 3 to 5 years. So they don't make it through. The average, yes. Now you'll have superintendents who last 10, 15 years. So that also means you have superintendents that last a year or 2 years. So it runs the spectrum of the average. Is there
any common denominator as to why there's such a high washout rate?
A lot of factors come into play. Sometimes it's just not a good fit for a variety of reasons.
sometimes superintendent is hired by a board, and a month later, 4 or 5 members of that board are replaced. So that superintendent is no longer the candidate or person of choice for the board. It's a tough job being a superintendent, as I'm sure Dr. Reddy
And for the record, I am not a candidate. Yeah.
Talk something about communications. Was that with us, with the community? What kind of communications?
So it is actually threefold. So it is with the board, keeping the board in the loop of the process all along the way. It is with the candidates, back and forth with the candidates, so we'll handle all your communication with your candidates. And it is also with the community. So we'll provide bi-weekly updates so that you can then post on your website or send out through your email alert system so that your community is also kept in the loop. So it is with the board, the candidates, and your community. So take care of it all. Yes.
How long do your searches take? Of the, you said 30 you've placed or 30 you've conducted?
30 we've conducted, and they've all resulted in a placement. So I would say on average, it's a good 5-month process. We've done it in as short as 3 months and as long as 9 months. But I would say on average, you're going to look between around the 4 or 5 month mark period. On average, sometimes 6 months. A lot of that has to do with the board, right? So if you decide, which we recommend, that you do the interviews as a committee of the whole, then we have to get 9 people to clear their calendars for us, right? The longest period that we like to determine is the actual going out and the recruiting of the candidates. And we really ask that you give us 4 to 6 weeks to do that. So that is the longest period that is kind of our controlling. Now, while we're doing that, we'll conduct the focus groups. We're doing the advertising. We're reaching out individually to folks. We're sending letters, and sometimes we are going after people that might not have been thinking about leaving their district. So we might have to start kind of talking them, hey, what about this district or that, in addition to those who we would advertise for.
And the second, you're saying a 95% success rate. How many of that 95% are in their first contract period?
Right now, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I would say the majority are in their second contract period.
So too, just based on the number of years
that we've been doing it.
And
So that
time that's
yeah.
passed.
So the first contract rate ones we are probably about 6 or 7 are in their first contract. So it would be last year and this year.
Yeah,
So,
that would make sense if we do about 3 per year.
Yeah.
So,
I would say that the majority are going through their second year or getting close to their second contract.
When did you go into this business? What was the year? I'm sorry, I missed that.
2009. Yeah.
My question concerns what you had said about a national search versus the statewide search. How might they be similar? How might they be different? Just the search.
getting the word out to the people. It might involve more advertising. That decision will come after some discussion amongst the board as far as what they're looking for and what they're open to considering.
I was just interested in how those searches would look different.
They look different. First, it would be in the advertising. So in Pennsylvania, we have a fairly vast network of advertising that costs no money. So there are many ways to get out to folks who are looking for a superintendent job that is really free in the Commonwealth. So you have PASA, PASBO, you have your state university and your private university systems throughout the state. You have PennLink, which goes to every superintendent in the Commonwealth. Then as you branch out in the tri-state area, so in Maryland, in Delaware, in New Jersey, and even in New York, there's the sister associations that are similar to PASA that will let us go on and advertise to their members free of charge. As you start to go more nationwide, you're going to have to start publicizing in places such as the National Association of School Boards, Education Week. So the cost is going to go from $0 in advertising to probably about $5,000 or $10,000 in advertising to get the word out on the national. Then the second part of it is your candidate pool will look different, right? So you will start having candidates who are either originally from Pennsylvania and are trying to get back to Pennsylvania, which we've run into. But to be honest with you, if they were originally from Pennsylvania and they're trying to get back to Pennsylvania, they know where to look in Pennsylvania. So you'll start looking at people that are from California, Oregon, Kansas, and who are looking for a new opportunity, and it might not be specifically Pennsylvania that they're looking for, but that they're looking for an opportunity from where they currently are not. And then you'll have to consider things such as, do I want to pay to bring someone in to be interviewed? Do I want to try to do like Skype or Zoom or telephone on first round and then only pay to bring someone in who would be a second or third? But other than that, it's pretty much the same. You're going to ask the same questions. You're going to require that they be eligible for to be a superintendent in the state of Pennsylvania, and you're going to look for a person that's a good fit. So it's really the technical aspects and not so much the actual process and what you're looking for.
Of the 30 that you have placed, what percentage were national versus statewide?
We've only really done probably 5 national searches, and that was always at the determination of the board. So Chester Upland was a national search, Radnor was a national search, I believe Rose Tree Media wanted to do a national search. I will tell you that in the end they all went local, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, yeah. They all went Pennsylvania.
Sometimes even though you don't advertise nationally, as Mary said, the word kind of trickles out, and we'll get candidates from other areas.
A guy from Oregon can read the PSBA.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we had a gentleman who actually is in Pennsylvania now. He didn't get the job in the search that we were doing, and it was about 4 years ago. My memory is not what it used to be, so I can't remember his name. But he was in, I believe, Oregon, and his wife told him that he had to come back home to Pennsylvania as soon as they had grandbabies, because that's where the grandbabies were.
Yeah.
So he came here, but he started looking. He knew where to look.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As you begin this process, and we decide what we want to, and where we want to advertise, what we want to say in the ad, and you put that out there for us. Do we see all these things before you put them out? And we see the ad that you're going to put out?
Yes. So we will provide you with all the written communications that we send out prior. We do ask that you give us a point of contact that is the final say, the approval process. However, we do searches where the whole board would like to look. Usually what we do in that point is say, yes, but please give us feedback by this date and time so that we can keep the process moving.
Do you, as this process moves on and you're getting all of these, everybody will want to come to Suburban, so you're going to have all these applications.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see these applications as you're, at some point, I mean, in groups or whatever, so that as you're doing the vetting process, we know what you're doing and kind of get a feel for what you, I mean, we may see something in somebody that you don't.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely. Do you want to talk about the Moodle site?
Having gone through this a couple of times, I know that everybody sees something different.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good point. We have a Moodle site that we manage and make available. You would all have your own individual login. The superintendent search team from the IU also has a login to that Moodle site. So once the posting has closed, I guess you would say, and we have received all the applications, it's a notification is sent to you, and you are asked to rate the candidates. And we have a process, and it's like a table almost, that you'll rank the candidates. Basically, initially, it's yes, I think we should interview them for a first round. No, I don't think we should give them a first round interview, or maybe. And, you know, you're making that decision based upon the criteria that we've identified through all of our conversations. It's tabulated, we come out to you and show you the results of the tabulation, and then sometimes we discuss it, because sometimes our results will be different than your results, so we'll discuss it and determine, you know, maybe you guys, you know, all voted yes on a particular candidate, and we all voted maybe. So, you guys want to interview them, we'll share why we thought maybe. If you still want to interview them, then we'll bring them in and interview them. So, yes, you're involved in every step of the way as far as that.
And when an application comes in, we try to get it loaded on the Moodle site within 48 hours, so you can actually see them coming in, so, and review them. So, some board members like to save them close to the end and do them all at once. Other board members like to go in and rank them as they come in, or do them in clumps, especially, as you say, when you have 40 or 50 applications to look through. Sometimes it can be daunting.
Based on your experience, how many applications do you think we might get?
I would say probably about 30 is a safe number, anywhere between 25 and 30. You have a very good school district, so.
And just to follow up on her question, do you recommend that those rankings be done independently? Like, I would sit down and do this independently, I wouldn't do that in a small group or do them independently?
There's various points in the process where we'll ask you to do things independently, and other points where we'll ask you as a group to discuss and come up with a group decision.
And then after you do them independently, that's when we come and meet and show the results, and then that's when the discussion with the board happens. And members can, you know, say why someone was a no, and you can say, well, I thought yes because, or I was on the fence because X, Y, or Z.
Could you talk about some of the characteristics of what I guess I'll call the candidate pool, and how it's changed since you started the business? The economy's changed, we've got this, what appears to be fairly significant turnover, or maybe dropout, and maybe that's another aspect of that. If somebody lasts 2 years or 3 years, does that person typically go on to be a superintendent in another district, or are they finished with it?
That varies, but I would say typically they go on to be a superintendent in another district. It's pretty rare that they take a job and then they just decide they don't want to be a superintendent anymore. It has happened.
So it's essentially a mismatch.
Essentially, yes.
And what about the, maybe it's not typical, but where these folks are in their careers? Do you tend to deal primarily with people that are just transitioning into the superintendent jobs, or people that have 3 or 4 or 5 other assignments in their resumes?
All of the above. I mean, there's always people who are maybe you know, a building administrator and want to be a superintendent, and so they'll throw their hat in the ring. But it'll depend on the criteria that you as the board identify as far as you know, what you decide as your own screening criteria. You may say, you know, we're an excellent school district, we need someone who has experience at least at the assistant superintendent level, or you know, maybe you need someone who's already had experience as a superintendent. So, you know, as far as who is out there, it's across the, you know, way across the gamut. And there are candidates who come into the field. There's not so many of them anymore, but you can become a superintendent through alternate routes as well. And so that's something that we'd have to find out from you also. Is that something that you're interested in? Maybe someone from the business arena, or who is a lawyer or an accountant. There are routes for them to become superintendents in schools.
What do you think about the strength of the candidate pool right now? Is it pretty good?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I don't know if you have any other
I
specific.
think you covered it. It really just runs the gamut in what you're looking for, but we've just finished up 2 searches, and I would say we had an excellent pool in both searches, a very rich pool. We're also finishing up the executive director for Capital Area Intermediate Unit, and I also would say that we had a rich pool in that one as well.
Now, do you have a norm for how many you typically interview in round 1 versus round 2, and how many rounds you typically have?
It really depends on the board and when they're screening. we really do hate to limit. Our first round interviews are what we call speed interviewing, because we would rather you see more candidates than less candidates. So if the whole board ranks them, not speed dating, no.
Was the mic on?
And it's not set up like that either.
But for anyone who's done interviews, you know you pretty much within the first 5 minutes of an interview know whether or not you want to see more of this person or not. So we encourage you, if there's 15 in the pool that you say, hey, I would really like just to have a face-to-face with this person, to bring those 15 in. On the other hand, if you look at it and you say, really, there's only 9 here or 8 here that I could see right now, we say, okay, bring in those 9 or 8, and then after those 9 or 8 are done, if there's 4 others, then we can always bring them in. But I would say between 8 and 12 is usually where we fall in. But we say if you're on the fence with someone, bring them in, have a 20-minute conversation with them, and it can't hurt. And you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll know within the first 5-10 minutes whether or not you want to see more of the person. And that's really what we ask you at the end of first round. Who do you want to see more of? We don't ask you who do you want to be your next superintendent. Who do you want to see more of? And then the second round of interviews are more in depth. They're about an hour in length. And then from there, you decide, do you have 2 or 3 candidates that you really need to come back and then have a third round with, that really you ask those unanswered questions. By the third round, we tell you, we want you to leave the third round with no unanswered questions about the candidate, for better or worse.
With regard to the focus groups that you mentioned, are they engaged at all in the interview process? Is that strictly the board?
Strictly the board, right. As I mentioned, our candidates like it to be a confidential process as
Right.
well. And the only way to do that is to have the board be the ones who do the interviewing. The community is engaged as far as providing the input so that the board is informed about what the community is looking for and what their concerns are. But you're the body that's elected to make decisions on behalf of the community.
And we find we get a higher quality candidate pool if the confidentiality is there. We could have 20 great candidates, but you're only going to hire 1 superintendent. And as much as a board may love its current superintendent, the moment they find out that that person is entertaining other job offers, it's going to sour that relationship. So we want to protect the candidates and in that way.
What does your search load look like at the IU? And are you engaged already for something beginning, such as we're going to do, I'm saying the first of the year or something, given the holidays coming in? But.
So we are currently in the beginning stage of one search. That's the Octorara Area School District. It's a Chester County School District. We are wrapping up the Capital Area Intermediate search, so we will, I would say, within the next 2 weeks, just be engaged in one search. We have the capacity. We did 5 once, and we said we would never, ever do that again because our staff, it's just very, very taxing. But we do believe we can do 3 high-quality searches, especially when they're at varying stages. So we have several teams that go out.
Obviously, and time is of the essence because, there's obviously a lot of districts out there going to be looking, and maybe we all have a little bit different criteria, but we are looking. So I think it's interesting to know how many you're handling and how many others you know of being out there in the field, where we stand. Are there 20 districts out there in this part of Pennsylvania or Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware who are looking, that kind of a thing, so that we know what the competition is?
I do not have that statistic off the top of my head, and we can certainly get that and get a statistic
kind of interesting to see who we're competing.
What I will say is this is the period, right?
Yeah.
So school districts are giving their superintendents notice, or the superintendents are thinking, maybe I need to give my school district a notice and starting to think about it. So this is the time when the searches start heating up, the second part of the year.
Do you find some of the candidates get on interview burnout? I mean, you look at the numbers that you've thrown out. If just your group is doing 4 or 5, let's say, and you're drawing from a candidate pool, there has to be some overlap in where you send these folks. If they're rising to the top, do they do 2 or 3 or 4 interviews with different districts while they're in their
Well,
search?
if they're actively looking, right? So if you're actively looking, yes, it's your choice. But it's amazing. I have seen superintendents. So if we're doing 2 searches at the same time, finishing up one and starting another, I have seen having a pool that's very similar, but none of the same candidates got chosen. Because it really is a lot about fit and what people are looking for. So you might have a district that has had a lot of churn, and they want someone who can be there for a long time, or willing to commit to the district for several contracts. Or you could have a district that has up-and-coming central office staff that they believe have a future at the district, but don't believe that they're ready for it that moment in time. So they just want sort of a one contract. They're happy if we just have a one contract superintendent who will mentor the people behind. So it's really there is a little bit of overlap, but it's amazing when you look at it. Districts will have the same pool and pick different people out of it.
Your vetting process, you mentioned that you make as many as 100 reference calls. Is that a process whereby you have a standard formula, or do you use some of the information you gather from the board and from the focus groups that you conduct?
Well, we do have a set of questions that we ask during the reference process. What we use from the board and the focus groups is actually we develop the candidate criteria for screening all the applicants and for developing the interview questions. So when it comes time to the reference check, we really are looking for what the person's strengths and weaknesses are to make sure that they match up in that aspect of it. So from that overlap, yes. And then also to make sure that there's nothing out there that you need to know about, that you don't know about. We do say that if you've been a superintendent, you're going to have negative press because you're going to have made an unpopular popular decision. What we don't want is that unpopular decision to be made for you to find out about it 2 weeks after the superintendent has been seated. And most of the time, you might look at it and go, well, okay, that's okay, we understand, these are board matters. Dr. Redding will tell you 50% of his decisions are loved by people and the other 50% are hated.
In winter, it's worse than that.
We are in, I would guess, somewhat of a unique situation in that we don't have an assistant superintendent either. Is that going to be viewed as a negative, or I should just phrase it, how will that be viewed?
I don't think it would be a negative. I think most superintendents would love the opportunity to have a say in who their assistant superintendent would be.
Well, that's sort of our thought.
Other questions? Okay. And really, I would like for you maybe just to listen to the rest of the conversation. The information that I had shared with the board had a packet. The second piece of it was the services that the School Boards Association does as it relates to the search services. And at one time, that's really the only organization in Pennsylvania that did searches. PSBA was the vendor that did all the searches in Pennsylvania. So they've scaled back, but they still do provide 2 levels of service, what they call the light, where they do some of the similar things with planning the search and advertising and getting candidate pools together, and then they turn it over to the board and they do what they want to do relative to interviews and the other process. Their second option is a little more detailed, where they are involved with the screening and the interviewing and helping to do the reference checks. So, there are, but PSBA does lots of other things. So, to weigh the advantages and disadvantages, again, they have lots of history on helping districts find a new superintendent, and provided information in print that would outline what those services would look like, and that's information that I had shared in the packet. The next piece of information was a sales letter that we received, and I think Corrine had even mentioned to me that this McPherson and Jacobson company out of Omaha, Nebraska, had reached out in the months leading up to this on what they do as a recruitment and development. I know nothing about this company, but certainly if you wanted a national company doing that process for you, we could get more information for you on them. The last packet is one of the vendors that I had talked to early on that was interested in providing the service, and their information is here, but I know that they are involved in other searches, and I think they made a decision to take on another district and notified me on the 21st that they no longer were available to be part of the consideration. So, there are basically 3 proposals here, and this is the first time we're having the conversation of what is the will of the board of additional information, additional questions that need to be answered. But my sense all along has been that we need to decide how we're going to proceed very soon so that we can get ourselves started on this 4 or 5 month process. Especially if you want to do the thorough and demanding job that I think is the sense of this board. So I would just open it up for additional questions back and forth, things to consider, direction to proceed. I am advocating that when we meet again on December 18th, we are passing a agenda item that sets the contract in place. So we don't need to decide tonight, but within the next 2 weeks, having a direction to proceed. So I'm open the floor, Mr. President, to...
What are the thoughts of the board? National? Regional?
When you say national or regional, you mean a national company? Or
National company, regional company, national search, regional search?
Looking at me, I'd say regional.
More regional, you're meaning like...
Regional firm, for sure.
York, regional firm, York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, that kind of region?
The ones that we've considered tonight would be CCIU or PSBA.
I have two comments. One is, I wonder, and forgive me if it's already in the packet, but do you have references or positive feedback from your, from your prior searches that's available for us?
Yes, so on one of the pages in the contract document lists, I think there's about 12 references there, that there's the board presidents of the searches that we've conducted, but we can give you more if you would like as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
And regarding the question of national or regional, my own view is to advocate national unless there's no value to it. That is, if the reality is that all of the candidates would be regional, then I could understand. But I think that we should have a view of getting the best candidate possible. So I would be interested to know why would we want to, limit that unless the argument is that there's no, there's no gain from it.
I wouldn't limit the search to regional candidates, but I'm suggesting that we use a regional firm to do the work.
Understands here, yeah.
And that, right, so we're saying the same thing then.
Keeping in mind there is a difference in cost then,
Yes.
because the national advertising starts to get bigger, but that's okay.
We find ourselves looking at national candidates who come in via some of these advertising opportunities that are free here in the state because they pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, but if we advertise national,
I understand that,
you know.
but I think you could get national response without advertising nationally, if I understand.
Oh, okay, so you're counting on if they might do
Word of
something on
mouth.
PSBA or PASTA or something, okay.
Robinson? Thoughts?
Well, I mean, based on the packet materials, I think the IU's presentation, I think they're clearly the superior choice. As far as the geographic location, you know, if somebody from Hawaii wants to come to Pennsylvania, I wouldn't exclude them.
You might question their sanity.
That's right.
Well,
In the middle of the snowstorm,
yeah,
heading into the winter.
but, you know, I think, regional, middle Atlantic states, I think there's a lot of advantage to really concentrating on that particular area for a variety of reasons.
Well, I would just throw out there that I certainly appreciate it and think that, you know, the obvious front runner would be the presentation that we've seen today, but I would like to see us bear in mind with regard to the question as to whether or not would be a national or a, you know, regional search, that the monies that would be spent in pursuing a new superintendent be perceived as investment as opposed to expenditure, if you understand what I'm saying, that if those in advertising dollars would glean the best candidate, then I would like to perceive those investment dollars as having been invested as opposed to spent. Just something to bear in mind when we're hashing out those thoughts.
I wouldn't see the amount that was discussed earlier as a deal killer from any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Not in this kind of a
Right.
expenditure.
Right.
So I guess what I wonder is, you described a 50-question thing that went out to essentially us and the community, where we're building a profile of what we'd like. So we've said, you know, the things that interest us. Do you do the same for the candidates, so that we're not looking at a resume and saying, yep, no, but we see profiles that fit what we've described?
So when we reach out to candidates, in a lot of conversations, we have one-on-one telephone calls with them. So we'll get parameters from you. And so if someone calls and says, I'm making these numbers up, I need to make $350,000 a year, we'll say, well, this is not the district for you, because we usually know what the salary range is. Or if we have someone who's coming in and you have decided you want a assistant superintendent level experience or greater as your baseline. Then if someone comes in and they have central office but not assistant superintendent or building principal, we will certainly let you see them. But when we talk to the candidate, when see them, I mean see their resumes. But we'll tell the candidate they're looking for someone with 3 years minimum assistant superintendent experience, if that is what you decide. So we do, yes, we kind of look at both sides so that they're not wasting their time and you're not wasting your time, right?
And will you, I'll use the word coach us with regard to, if we said, oh, we must have somebody who has assistant superintendent level, and you would, maybe you think that now you realize you could consider this, or maybe we need to look at things from a different angle. You'll help us with some of these.
Yes.
I mean, we
job.
are after all, right,
Yes.
we are after all volunteers.
Yes.
We're really smart volunteers, but, you know,
Yeah, right.
volunteers nevertheless. So I would, certainly we would look to you for that kind of guidance and coaching.
We will try to provide you with the benefit of our experience.
That's what I'm after.
John, were you thinking of any specific criteria besides the obvious?
Well, I think, to be really sort of blunt about it, you could get a type A personality that's going to drive the district in a certain direction. You can get a carer and nurturer that's going to do something different. And from a personality profile, it would be interesting to see if the board did a personality search assessment, what the criteria came out, if that makes sense. So that's it. So rather than got to be an assistant superintendent.
Years of experience and
Yeah,
size district you were in and so on.
yeah, that's good stuff, but I want to know about, how they would approach the district, how they would approach the administrators, the students, and the community, because everybody has a stake in this.
So that in close to 50 questions. It's 24, but they have parts A, B, and C, some of them. So by the time, part of that is those items that are quantifiable very easily, how much experience, what level of education, how much salary. And the others will be more intangible qualities that
Almost
we'll
like a
find
predictive index or something,
and
so, yeah.
try to get from you is what you're looking for. So that it's a fit. It's a marriage. And someone might be a great superintendent in another district, and when they come here, they might fail abysmally, and it has nothing to do with their skill level. It might just have to do with a cultural difference.
And one of the underlying purposes of all those questions is for us to facilitate discussion amongst you all, so that you can hear each other, listen to each other, and really decide as a group. We don't get through all those questions in one night typically, so it takes quite a while, because they do, not every question, because some of them are easily answered, but some of them take quite a while to get through the level of conversation that you need to come to a decision.
So that would be the first step then.
So I would, board, what other information do you think you would need to come in here in 2 weeks prepared to talk about making a decision?
It'd be helpful to know between the two, what are the true differences between what PSBA has proposed as its, higher level proposal versus CCIU, because there is a price difference between those two, but it doesn't really tell me on paper what is so different about what one is going to provide more than the other to make up for that.
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
I know.
Did I miss somewhere along the way the reason why they're not making a presentation?
Short notice that we wanted physically for them to be here. And they're not as aggressive in looking for this work as they once were. I think part of it is the staff that they have. Matter of fact, if you choose the second level, they subcontract some of that work with, and actually their level 2 or option 2 price point is very similar to this. So it's only if you wanted to take more control and you had lots of staff back here in the office that didn't have things to do, that could do the work of reference checks and organizing things, the type of service that you've heard from Chester.
Conceivably, we went to PSBA level 2, they could contract with.
Well, they wouldn't contract.
Here,
no,
but
they would definitely subcontract with someone else who's probably a retired superintendent who has helped them through the search before. But the price, like I said, if you would almost have to, if you're going to compare apples to apples, the option 2 from PSBA with Chester County IU, and those price points are very similar.
During the last search, was a search firm engaged?
No.
Why?
Because we felt that we had people on the board who could help us with this vetting, and they were upper level management people who were used to hiring management level people, 2 people, and the board committed as 9 people to be at every meeting, to work with them, and we reviewed them all, but these 2 people really took the lead on it.
In any of our, I mean, I don't know, Ellen, I think you have some of the longest tenure here. I mean, you've been part of a couple searches. Has the board ever used a search firm?
No. Because...
Same reasonings, or was...
No, when you went from Dr. Dovey, left in the spring, and by the fall, they had appointed Dr. Hartman as acting and made him superintendent, and then went about finding an assistant superintendent, or allowing a superintendent to do that. When Dr. Hartman was getting ready to retire, that's when the board felt that we had the people on the board to do this, and we did the search that way. And then Dr. Orban left, Dr. Merkel stepped up. So we're in somewhat different circumstances, but we have never used a search firm.
So given we've never used a search firm, and it seems like there's been more internal candidates, it's just an open question, but are we prepared to have that job description and know what we're looking for, or what's that process look like, and how long are we going to be prepared to?
Well, that's some of
that's
some of probably where the difference is now. Wouldn't you agree, Lois? We have to come up with the job description. Consequently, we look to, perhaps that's one of the reasons driving us to look
That's
for.
part of the discussion in the survey, to find out what criteria we're looking for to build that job description appropriately. And I think that's actually, an important thing that we've skipped over for the past several searches, that I think would benefit us greatly now.
Well, we haven't actually done this kind of a search.
I agree.
This is a different animal.
Well, and let's make sure we're not using the word job description incorrectly. I mean, the duties of the superintendent are the job description.
Yeah.
The qualifications for that are what this group...
The characteristics that we're looking
right.
for.
Yeah, the job description is set.
Right.
I mean, there's... Yeah.
I understand, but
okay.
Just in terms of profile and what that fit is.
Yeah, that's...
And I think part of the concern, I just anecdotally, in my experience, fewer and fewer districts are taking this upon themselves. Fewer and fewer boards, I should say, are doing it without some kind of professional guidance. Anecdotally, districts that I'm aware of, certainly in York County, in recent times have used a service.
I think because of the desire to go on a larger geographic area. You're not just looking here in York County.
Right.
We're wanting to look maybe in the Northeast or wherever it is that we, and there are so many more outlets that you can use and all kinds of things. And these people know who they could call, probably 15 people right away, and say, are you interested in York Suburban or something like that, where we don't have that capability. I don't think anybody here in this room does, to do that.
So do we think in 2 weeks we'll have the information to make a decision?
I would like to echo Steve's comment about the references, that could be useful for us to have those additional references, just to do whatever vetting, board members might like to do.
Okay.
But that's something that'll have to go through administration and have to be vetted. I mean, as far as this.
Yeah, the list of, I'm sure there's.
There is a list in here.
There is a list.
Others.
I saw
additional
that,
ones.
Yeah.
Additional ones.
We're stuck with one of those nasty realities of the school board calendar. We're meeting tonight, talking about something that we're hoping to vote on next time, 2 weeks from now. What takes place between now and then to get it on the agenda? What's that process?
This discussion?
So we're saying tonight we want...
And the agenda is put together by the president.
You're looking for head nods, or you're going to come...
Yeah, I'm looking for generic head nods that if you're provided with the information that we've just talked about, you'll be ready in 2 weeks to come and make a determination of which direction we're going.
I would agree with that, assuming that you've made some of these calls to references and John or Dr. Redding or whoever it is that would do that, and we'll feel comfortable in sharing some information with us.
Sure.
About that, just because.
Discomfort with that direction? Going once? Going twice. Okay.
Mary and Danielle, thank you very much for,
Thank you so much.
yeah, for sharing your insight. Moving on the agenda, F on my list, and then I'm going to turn it over, is an item that would be on the agenda for this December 18th, and it's a recommendation to rename one of our student activity accounts that currently is the instrumental music student activity account to the high school music program student activity account. And Dr. Ellis is here if there is any specific questions that you need answered. You could jump in on
why.
Really, in the last couple of years, I've been looking more closely at the activity accounts, and one of the pieces the music department is trying to act more collectively as opposed to separately. So in many opportunities that we have to try to combine the chorus, the orchestra, and the band together, we're trying to take that, similar to what the music boosters did a couple of years ago, from being just the band boosters to taking all the groups. So a couple of items down further, I believe it's in the business report, there's actions to bring some funds from choir organizations under that same umbrella. So that's simply what we're trying to do at this point.
Okay, yep, I'll turn it over to Kareem.
Ms. Mason, Business Office.
Thank you. The first two items on the business office report, I'd like to ask for votes this evening. It's to help move things along with our facilities construction projects. The first item is the administration recommends board approval of the contract with Core Design Group for a total of $25,000 for East York Elementary School for the first phase of renovations to the building.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The second item is the administration recommends board approval of the contract with Gilbert Architects, Inc. for services on a time and expense basis not to exceed 5% of the construction cost. This is for the total roofing project in the district.
So moved, with the addition of the fact that it's for the roofing projects in the district.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Do we not have a super, or a, architect of record? I'm just not.
We don't, we did away with that, I want to
Okay.
say 3 years now.
Okay, okay.
Be a short.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. The next items then would be considered for approval at the December 18th meeting. And I believe all of these are related to high school, as far as travel in February for the high school English seminar students to see a production of Hamlet. That's items 1 and 2. One's transportation and one's for the tickets. Item 3 would be to, just as Mr. Ellis referred to, is recommending of closing the YS Singer and choir student activity accounts and placing them into that new high school music program. And then the fourth item is to close the French Club account and place the remaining balance in the National Honor Society activity account. And then the last item is also related to high school, and that would be a contract for the high school 11th and 12th grade honors English students to attend a Broadway show next November, and that contract is in the amount of $5,175. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I back up? What happened to French Club? Why do they want to close their?
The French Club was a temporary organization. For a number of years, we didn't have French Honor Society because we did not have level 5 of the language. We've since reestablished the French Honor Society, therefore the club is no longer functioning in that capacity, functioning as the French Honor Society.
Understood, thank you.
How many students are part of item number 5?
Item 5, we would expect between 60 and 80 students based upon our current numbers.
And are these budgeted items now?
The field trips are subsidized by the students themselves, so we do have to outlay the money to begin with. However, the funds are then paid for by the students to participate.
Atkins.
All right, so to recap from the last board meeting, Indian Rock did meet their goal and collected 1,051 canned food items. So Dr. Gully ended up wearing his unicorn costume for the day. And as Dr. Stoll says, they also gathered 530 items at Yorkshire. So obviously that's really great for the community. This past Saturday was district band and orchestra auditions. The following people made one of the two ensembles: Bella Spodato, Adam Weiler, Julianne Gifford Mahaney, Kira Clifford, and Zoe Pratt. So obviously that list is pretty incredible. It's really good for a district to have one student make one of the ensembles, let alone 5. So it's really good for those students. The middle school concert, the chorus concert will be this Wednesday, December 6th. Their band concert and orchestra concert is next Wednesday, December 13th. The Indian Rock and East York combined concert is at the high school this Thursday, December 7th, and the high school combined music concert is on Sunday, December 17th, and they're all at 7 o'clock, so obviously it'll be pretty packed for the holiday season. East York and Indian Rock are also having their holiday Secret Santa shop this Friday, and this Saturday is the PTO holiday breakfast, book fair, and holiday shop that all families are welcome to attend. This Thursday, or next Thursday, sorry, is the school-wide competition for Poetry Out Loud at the high school starting at 3 p.m. And with that, they'll pick a winner that will move on to the regional competition. Also at the high school, NHS started their food drive today. It's in all of their flexes, and that'll run this week. And then they also had a blood drive before Thanksgiving break. It was the day before, and that was really successful. All juniors, as Dr. Adams said, are taking the English Keystones tomorrow, and then there are some students also taking the Algebra 1 and Biology Keystones Thursday and Friday. And the Brainbusters team won their match against Waynesboro, so they will be back on WGAL for a second round later this winter. And in volleyball, Shea Buckingham was named the PVCA District 3 Class 3A first team All-Star, and Allie Reinecker was the second team All-Star. And that is the conclusion of my report. Any questions?
No, but thank you. You really give a good report.
When will the date of that Brainbusters air, do you know?
They don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't know who they're going yet.
February or something, you know what I'm saying, like month.
I'll let you know, though.
Okay, thanks.
Committee reports, Academic Standards and Curriculum Committee.
Yes, we met this past week and had several things coming out of committee that the board will need to vote on, I guess, next at our next meeting. We had a new K-5 English Language Arts program that was proposed, and we had several new and modified course proposals for the high school, as well as some new textbook proposals. The link for the specific information
We're going to move that over to public tonight.
is in the confidential section, but we'll move it over just so that the board can see that and have any questions. With regard to the new course offerings for the high school, Dr. Ellis is here. If we have questions, I'll endeavor to get it all right, but correct me if I misspeak, Dr. Ellis. We're adding AP World History that will replace Honors Global Studies. That would be 10th graders. We would like to add Accounting 3 in the business department, which will be primarily juniors and seniors. We are proposing to add Family Consumer Science course, Baking for Business. That will be 10 through 12 graders will be taking that. Adding an Anatomy Physiology 2 in the science department. and, some modifications or changes, which I think are the ones that are actually more timely. Those new courses would be proposed for next school year. The modifications, are to rename Honors Physics to Physics 1, Honors Physics 1 to AP Physics 1. And that's so that obviously students would be able to have the AP course listed on their transcript for college admission. That's always a plus, as well as potentially take the AP exam and avoid perhaps an additional college physics class, so that might actually, benefit the parents' checkbook, which is always a good thing. There's a proposal to modify the health course that ninth graders take from 5 days a cycle to 6 days a cycle, and that just revolved around additional curricular needs and the obvious need to learn more about, as much as we can, about healthy lifestyles and such. There's a proposal to eliminate the independent physical education option that high school seniors, we, just for the new board members, we instituted this change a couple of years ago to allow seniors to take an independent phys ed course, and they had to check in, or I guess it was juniors and seniors, they had to check in with their teacher and offer a log of their activities if they went to the gym or whatever independent physical education option that they chose. And now the proposal is to eliminate that for a variety of reasons, predominantly that not that many students were interested in doing it. Had started out well over 100 and boiled down to most recently barely 20. So it was taking up the time of a staff member who will now be able to teach a proper course. Modification of English 1 and Biology 1 to 6 days a cycle from 9 days a cycle. And last but not least, reinstitute Honors Algebra 1 as a ninth grade, as an option for ninth grade students. I know it's a lot of information. Again, I encourage you to go into that confidential section, and I guess it's being moved over to a public section so that any interested members of the public would also be able to see this information as well. I wouldn't be able to answer specific questions, but we have the one who knows all the answers. How'd that do, Dr. Ellis?
You did awesome. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Great summary.
Anything for him with regard to these courses? We had a lengthy discussion, and Mr. Robinson, if you have anything to add, you were the other committee member there, and two other board members in attendance, Mr. Sears and Mrs. Fryrick. If you have anything to add, go for it.
Couldn't hope to approach your eloquence.
Oh my, yes. Now, there are also new textbooks, which I suppose we could pass around and we could all...
Ooh and ah.
So they are available if anybody is interested. And it just occurred to me, Mr. President, we've asked for public comment, very limited this evening, so we might want to do that.
Would any member of the public like to?
We'll do that now.
Yeah.
Lois Ann, I think it would be interesting to note that with all the textbooks, we're going to order just enough for one class at a time. Most of them will have the digital component that the students will have access to. Am I correct on that?
Correct. The majority of students prefer the online versions of the textbooks, so we're going to focus on trying to be the most cost-effective as possible to purchase the online that they can access to their Chromebooks and then have classroom sets available to the students. Unfortunately, the publishers are wise to that idea, and they pretty much, there's not a whole lot of difference. A lot of times they just throw in the book for free when you buy the online component. we're gonna be as frugal as we can and as, and responsible to student interests to that end as well.
It's terrible what textbooks cost. One of them was the chemistry, it was $150 or something. It's really bad.
Even though I was there, Brian, I'm just curious to know about the licensing. Is it done per student? Is that the way that the prices are determined?
Generally correct. We would purchase 270 licenses or 250 licenses depending on how many students are in that particular environment, and that's
So you really
passed
get a
on.
license per student, and does that then mean you get 250 books?
Correct. Correct. And then those licenses are typically renewable for 6 years. Some are a little bit longer than that, so when Elise's junior class graduates or moves on, then the next junior class comes in, they inherit those licenses up until we use them, so.
So it really isn't, there's not a disparity between the number of licenses and the number of books. They are the same.
Correct.
Anything else for me? Any questions or anything? Thank you. Oh, the minutes from our August meeting have been approved, and they are there for your edification as well.
Personnel Committee report. In the absence of a Personnel Committee, I will fill in. This will be a consent agenda. You have before you the Personnel report, which includes employment, leave of absence, substitute teacher, guest teachers, and volunteers. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items?
Not yet.
If not, the chair moves approval of the below-mentioned items.
Second.
Comment? Corinne?
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Are there any additional committee reports or announcements? Lincoln Intermediate Unit, there is a Dawn's Early Light link on the page. Ms. Frarick, York Adams?
Yeah, York Adams Academy, we continue to use all 12 of our seats at York Adams Academy, and I would just, for the new members, our winter graduation will be December 19th at the York Learning Center at 7 o'clock, and everyone is invited to come.
I think we have 5 students that are...
As of now, we still have another week or two to go, so, yeah, really good.
Ellen, for the new members, could you explain what the York Adams Academy is?
York Adams Academy is an alternative high school here in York County, which offers students who are not particularly well suited to the more traditional environment at suburban or central or Dallastown. We have actually 16 school districts between York and Adams County that participate. 9 of us are actually full members. That means we have at least 12 seats, and we meet over at the old Central York High School. And we have, at any one time right now, we have at least 100 students involved or more. And these 12 seats that York Suburban purchases, and hopefully we're in the budget for 12 seats.
Just got the request today.
Did you get that? Okay. For next year, but kids go through that as rapidly as they can complete their requirements. So a junior may arrive closer to senior year, have not as many requirements. Some people will arrive at the very end of senior year, they just need that senior English, and we try and get them through so that they can graduate with their class in June. The Academy has actually been in existence since 1990 and has graduated somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,600 or 3,700 students in that time. With some restructuring 5 or 6 years ago, after the state came in and took a look, we now issue a dual certificate that it will say York Suburban School District, York Adams Academy. It is signed by our superintendent, and actually those graduations count in our graduation numbers here at York Suburban, which makes it a really good deal for the students and for the school district when you're looking at the statistics to the total number of students that we graduate. And Dr. Ellis has been including most of those names in our graduation book in the last few years, and I'm very thankful for that because these students, some of them go on to college, some of them go on to the technical schools. It's really encouraging to see, and they just get a lot more of the one-on-one help that they need, and they're always thanking our teachers for the time and energy that they offer them. You're more than welcome if you'd like to take a look-see over there. Give me a call, and I'd be glad to show you around over there. Neat program. Thank you.
York County School of Technology.
Yes, just a couple of things. We did at our last meeting, approve of the budget, so that'll be, going forward to the 14-member school districts. Just, again, for general information, each board of the 14-member school districts will, vote on the budget, and they must have 10 school districts approve it. Obviously, that means 4 school districts can disapprove, and yet that budget would go forward. It's a pretty picture for York Suburban. I don't have the figures available at the moment, but we will vote on it. We have until January, I believe, to approve it. But that was a topic of discussion that we looked at, and just by way of information, I'd like you to know that their SPP score, the school performance profile for the York County School of Technology, was 85.8, which is outstanding, one of the top ones in the county.
60s, 3 years ago, I believe.
Yes. It was in the low 80s last year, but that's up from somewhere in the 60s over just the last 4 years, I believe. But remembering that those are our students, too. Sometimes we have a tendency to forget that, but the question was asked earlier with regard to how many York Suburban students are there. It does vary. It's been my experience, it kind of ebbs and flows. We have just under 40 at the School of Technology now, but certainly with regard to our community, the entire school is, part of our community. So I wanted to mention that and publicly congratulate the School of Technology for that super SPP score.
Do you have any insight into what's behind it? It's a pretty significant increase.
Huge focus by the faculty in saying, this is important, and we need to really focus on our academics as opposed to just strictly their shop. But they've and the students have taken. I should add that the students have taken enormous pride there. When you walk in the door, I noticed the other night when I was there for the meeting, it's a big banner, that our score was the 85.8, and just a lot of personal school pride in doing well. I would have to say that's a big part of it as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
The board meeting and committee schedule is attached. And before I go out for comments to our public one more time, I mentioned earlier that I would reach out to you for your views on committee assignments. One of the suggestions that came to the previous board was how we should structure committees. Right now, each committee meets separately, so we have an option of continuing that, where you really get into detail, or doing a committee as a whole during the board meetings, where all information is brought out to all members of the board. I think some hybrid of that may be appropriate, but I would ask you to think about it over the next couple of nights so we can have a discussion about how we want to run our committee structure. So, and with that, I will reach out to the public one more time. Nope. And there will be an executive session immediately following this. We'll take a quick break and come back, and I think we're adjourned. Thank you.